talk to our guest, John Longworth. He's the co-chair of the Leave Means Leave campaign and joins us now. Good morning to you, John.
Good morning.
How hopeful are you that there will be something close to a deal coming out of Brussels today?
Well, we'll have to see. I think the most important thing is that the Prime Minister, if pursuing this deal, doesn't in any way give away the freedoms that we've so hard won, because if she does that, it won't be Brexit. It'll be Brexit in name only.
And this is the big issue, isn't it? Because there are so many bones of contention between the EU and the UK. I mean, not least obviously the Irish border issue still up for debate. The European Court of Justice as an issue. The issue over how much we pay or don't pay for a divorce deal. The rights of EU citizens and British citizens in their respective countries post Brexit. Which is the biggest concern for you at Leave Means Leave?
Well, I think the biggest concern is that we must preserve our rights to be able to organise our economy in the way that we want to. And if there's any indication at all that the European Union is going to try and restrict the way in which we operate after we've left, then it simply won't be worth having the trade deal. One of the big mistakes the government made right at the beginning of the negotiations was to define success and failure on the basis of whether we get a trade deal with the EU. When actually the real success of Brexit is that we take back control of our laws, our borders and our money, and that we're better off out than we otherwise would have been in. And we don't have to have a trade deal to be better off. In fact, if the government implements the right economic policies and we lead cleanly and swiftly, we can be better off without a trade deal.
I mean, this is one of the issues, isn't it? Is that this has all now become about a choice between a sort of, quote, hard Brexit, quote, crashing, falling off a cliff, all of this, as opposed to getting a trade deal. It now seems to be the situation where the government has moved towards the Labour position from the last election and manifestos, which is that any deal is better than no deal.
Well, that's the worry. Of course, the government did declare in the Lancaster House speech that they would leave the single market and the customs union. If we don't leave those two institutions, we haven't left the European Union. It's as simple as that. There is no soft and hard Brexit. There's only one type of Brexit, and that's to leave. However, if the government in this negotiation in the next few months start to give away those freedoms, in actual fact, it won't be worth the biscuit. And paying a huge amount of money, perhaps as much as $55 billion, for the privilege of having no say in European affairs, taking all the rules and having no freedom to act would be a ludicrous situation. It would actually be a worse situation than we were in by being in the European Union.
Now, a number of former ministers, including former cabinet ministers, have signed a letter organised by your organisation, Leave Means Leave. Owen Paterson, Nigel Lawson, John Redwood, Ian Duncan-Smith, all Tories, of course, basically signed a letter saying that 7 conditions, they say, should apply before the UK makes any divorce payment to the EU. Are you confident that Theresa May is going to be listening to what those former ministers say?
Well, I'm hoping that she'll be listening. And of course, the 30 people who signed the letter were not just senior Conservative politicians. We also had Labour politicians, some very serious economists, and some top entrepreneurs and business people signed that letter, all of whom agree that we should have a series of red lines to say to Theresa May that if, in fact, the European Union don't appear to be agreeing to a trade deal by March next year, in other words, if they haven't completed, in principle, a trade deal, we should walk away and we should stop negotiating on a trade deal and we should adopt World Trade Organization rules of trade. And of course, WTO rules, the World Trade Organization rules, are the rules under which we conduct most of our exports. Most of our exports around the world successfully take place under those rules.
And in terms of this divorce deal, we're told, look, you and I both know there is no legal or moral requirement on the UK to pay anything to leave. We simply have to trigger Article 50. That's been done. End of March 2019. We're out of it. We've got no duty to pay anything. But there is maybe an argument to sort of for goodwill gestures in return for speeding up the process and getting things quickly on the table that may benefit us. But do you think that the deal that we're talking about, what we've been hearing about that's been discussed discussed at the table with Jean-Claude Juncker today, it appears that Theresa May is of the view that this money is money that is contingent on there being a trade deal. But we're hearing that the EU seem to think that this money is it's an offer, it's on the table, it's what happens, and they have to pay whether or not there is a trade deal at the end of those talks or not. In either of those circumstances, is that money worth the expense for the British taxpayer?
Well, it's certainly true that the European Commission think that we are obliged to pay for certain things which we've signed up to. However, of course, if you're not getting the benefits of the things that you signed up to, then why should we continue paying? The fact of the matter is that if we end up having to pay a huge sum of money, 55 billion, as and when it falls due over many, many years to come, so including for, say, European Commission pensions, for example, then it could actually, looking back, look like a small price to pay, because it would be a small amount each year, much less than we would otherwise have paid if we stayed in. The size of that amount, 55 billion, is simply an indicator of the huge amount of money that we were paying into the EU, and justifies having decided to leave. However, if we end up having to pay in a lump sum, that would be majorly problematic, because where's the money going to come from? Higher taxes, more borrowing? It would damage the economy. Of course, we don't have to pay it at all. We could simply walk away. And you have to simply place this money as a contingent amount on having a good trade deal that's good for the UK. And the EU themselves have said nothing is agreed until everything is agreed. So the money should not be handed over, not 1 cent, until we've agreed a very good trade deal with the EU. And if they're not prepared to do that, we should move to WTO rules and we should pay nothing.
OK. John Longworth, pleasure to speak to you. Thank you very much indeed.